Alright, hey everybody, it's Chris G. It's time for another update. Today we're going to do the update of Section D. And if you see me look down every once in a while, it's because I have a few notes. I mean, it's 5 or 6 days. It's hard to remember all the highlights of each day. Section D goes from Cajon Pass, and it goes all the way to Agua Dulce, give or take a little bit. It's about 113 miles. And so where we left off, we were right outside where you get into Section D at the McDonald's at Cajon Pass. And day 19, when camped a little bit outside of Cajon Pass because I wanted to go in there and get some McDonald's for breakfast. It's kind of an odd situation. You walk out of the woods and you're on an interstate, Interstate 15, you're just on an interstate in the middle of 4 lanes on both sides, and you get out there and you take a right and you see a giant McDonald's convenience store. It's really nice. Go in there and get your McDonald's breakfast. And when I was there, I hung out for a while. I got some water. I had to go over to the Best Western, which is a place that a lot of hikers stay. They accept packages for free. It's really nice, but you have to cross the overpass on the highway to get there, so it's a little bit sketchy, but it was during the day and there was a nice shoulder, so I walked on that. And when you get out of Cajon Pass, there's a little bit of an issue about water because there's a campground called Guffey Campground that's a little bit outside of it, but when I was there, it was a little cold, and so that pipe had frozen and they weren't too sure about whether you're going to be able to get water out of there. So I had to carry about 5 liters out of there, and it was pretty heavy. So I got to my campsite that night, and the next place I went on day 20 was from my campsite out of Cajon Pass to Wrightwood. Wrightwood is a trail town that you can get to. It's pretty easy to get hitched down to Wrightwood from where the trail is. And when you go to Wrightwood, they have an interesting situation with the hardware store. That's where everything happens in Wrightwood, is from the central hub of the hardware store. And they have a list of about, I'd say, 11 or 12 trail angels, which are people that'll bring you into their house, usually give you a spot to stay. Sometimes it's a bed, sometimes it's a floor. But when you do that, you can stay there, and sometimes they'll feed you, sometimes not. And what I did was I called around to a few people, and I finally found a guy named Jeff. And it was kind of an odd situation because when I called him, he said he was out of town at a golf game, but he was going to come back later. And sure enough, Jeff came back. He came and picked me up at about 6 o'clock, and I went to his house. And it was like stepping out of California straight into a house in the South. He came and picked me up in a Jeep Cherokee 2-door, tools laying everywhere. He had a I Love American Bluegrass bumper sticker on the back of his Jeep, and he loved bluegrass. I walked into his house. It was like a country farmhouse looking feel, and it was great. Him and his wife were there. They had a nice place where you could take a shower, do your laundry, and had a lot of little dogs, and had, bird feeders set up in front of their house that they were sitting there watching. And then that night, sure enough, Jeff listened to his bluegrass music with his wife, and it was really nice. And the next morning I woke up, and his wife made me and the other gentleman there, his name was Ghost, they made us all breakfast. And then pretty early in the morning before church, Jeff offered to give me a ride back to the trailhead when I asked, and I got a good start that day. And from Jeff's, I started at about 9 o'clock, and I headed out to another really famous spot on the trail, and that's Mount Baden-Powell. And so you get into Wrightwood, and the hiking is not that bad, but then you get over to where Mount Baden-Powell is, and you're hitting some switchbacks pretty hard. I don't know if it's 6 or 8, but there's a bunch of day hikers up there when I went because it was Sunday, the weekend. And they were breathing pretty hard. I talked to one guy, and he asked me how the snowpack was, but I was going north up the mountain. He was coming back down, and I said, I think you turned the wrong direction. You're not going the right way. And it was a really nice day. I got up to Mount Baden-Powell for lunch. There was a little bit of snow up there, but it was really nothing that you needed any kind of spikes or an ice axe or anything like that for. I understand after I left, the days passed and the weather got a little bit worse. And that day I kept going, and I was going to go to one place, but then I got to a detour on the PCT. It's about a 5-mile detour, and the reason they had the detour is there's an endangered species habitat on part of the trail. And so the detour, you have to road walk like I said, about 4 or 5 miles, and then you get back on the trail. But it was really nice because once I did my 26 mile day, got to a place called Cooper Canyon Campsite. And this is in the Los Angeles National Forest. This is one of the mega sites, like 20 plus people can camp there. So I got there, and it was a really nice area with a bunch of trees for a hammock. They had a lot of little cook things, a lot of fire pits and things like that. So I got there, set up my bear bag, and had a pretty nice night. And then day 22 after that was one of the windiest days on the trail. It was just so much wind, and I got to one area where I thought I was going to be able to camp. It was at a fire station, but the wind was just howling, and I said I got to get away from this fire station, out of this valley where I was at, and ended up walking around a mountain. There was a vague comment about a tent spot, down the side of the mountain that was out of the wind, and I wound up finding some hammock trees right before that spot. And the night was pretty nice. It got really cold that night, and it went into day 23, and that was when I camped in that spot on the side of the mountain. I woke up and it was cold. It was probably the coldest morning I had the whole trail. I woke up and I got out, and there was frost all over the side of my tarp. There was frost inside my sleeping bag and my hammock and the foot end, I guess where my feet had sweated and made a little condensation before it got really cold. And so the only choice then was to pack everything up and get moving, and that's what I did. And once I got to my spot for that night, I was about, I'd say 19 miles in or something like that. But then I read about the Acton KOA, which is a place thru hikers can camp. It's about 10 or 15 bucks, which is kind of expensive, but the good thing about that was that you can order pizza to that campsite, and that's what I ended up doing. And it was some excellent pizza. They also delivered some beers. I had some of those. And there were a lot of other thru hikers there that I hadn't met yet, and so it was really good at the Acton KOA. I highly recommend going and check that out when you're hiking through. They have a little store. It's a little bit overpriced, but that's what you're going to get when you're so close to the trail. You can literally see you could see the campsite from standing on the trail. And that leads me into day 24, which is the day that I hiked about 10 or 12 miles in to Agua Dulce, which is the town that ends Section D, but into Agua Dulce, I did another update there, you might remember. That's the hiker hostel. It's a donation base. It's called Hiker Heaven, the Sophies. And when you go there, it's awesome. They do your laundry. They have resupply boxes that they take in for free. They have a town shuttle that runs like every hour and a half where you can go to Agua Dulce and get things. And if you're going to Agua Dulce, I highly recommend staying at Hiker Heaven. But always remember when you stay there that there's no wells or municipal water in Agua Dulce. All the water that they have at Hiker Heaven, they get tanked in. And if you notice when you're walking around, you see giant water tanker trucks just driving back and forth to fill up people's wells on the outside of their house. And if you look close enough, you can see the wells, because they're not buried. They're just big water tanks out on the side of their house, and you'll see them at Hiker Heaven. You also see them at all the places near Hiker Heaven. So if you decide to stay there, give them a little donation. I think they said during prime hiker season they have to pay $90 a load for water, and it's every other day or every 3 or 4 days. And so that's Section D, and we'll see you next time for Section E update.